I'm back. Hopefully you can hear me now. Can... Oh boy. Okay, there's only one of you that's on right now, but that one of you who came back, can you hear me? If you can, put something in the comments, let me know that you can hear me. You should be able to hear me now. Okay, thank you, Theresa. Thank you so much. Let's see if we can't get our audience back. I am so sorry. It seems like I'm having more and more technical difficulties with this program and this computer. Going to give it a little more time for a few other people to come back on and join us for what I think will be a very robust and exciting conversation, enlightening. Right now it's just me and you, Theresa. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes, and then if no one comes on, then we won't have the conversation. You and I can talk over the phone. So there's Toya. Good morning. Good morning. Again, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm trying to wait for everybody to figure out that we're back on and to get back over here. The two of you can help me by tagging, especially some of the ones that you know are our usuals that are here with us. Go ahead and tag them and invite them to come. People like Bree and Diana and Whitland, Michael, our normals, Gloria and all of the others. See if we can alert them. Kamoria, that we're here, and try and build our audience back up. So if you don't mind just tagging as many of them as you can, and I'm gonna give it a few more minutes. Maybe everybody's busy, or maybe the title itself kind of scared some people away and said, no, we don't want to touch that. I hope that's not the case. Diana. I'm gonna give it a little bit more time. See if I can't tag a few people as well. Very good coffee, Teresa. Very good coffee, Teresa. Oops. Wow, now that I am actually listening on Facebook, I didn't realize with this microphone you could actually pick up all of that background noise of traffic passing by the house and everything else like that. That's a lot. Wow, Toya, thank you. You are just you are tagging everybody. Theresa, you falling behind. You ain't tagging nobody. All right. Hey, Jamie. So, I want to get into this, what I think is a very interesting, enlightening conversation, as the title suggests, that we want to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian war that's taking place right now. We want to look at some logical, common sense information versus I don't know why either. Theresa's just not, I guess. As well as some of the propaganda and rhetoric, governmental rhetoric, media rhetoric, propaganda, religious rhetoric that's being thrown around about this, and why it's significant and why it's important to humanity, our global existence, the global community of conscious, aware, enlightened people. So, as more and more people are tuning in, then we're going to delve into the conversation. Before we actually get to that, I had a very interesting question sent to me a few days ago, and I was at the time busy trying to get some things done and accomplished, and I wasn't able to answer right away. And then as I thought about it, I thought it was a question worth addressing during one of our live conversations. So I'm going to read it to you. I'm not going to say who it came from. I'll just say it's one of my goddaughters who I love and I'm very, very proud of. I think she's absolutely amazing, a phenomenal young lady. She wrote me this question. Here, I'm going to read it to you. She said, well, this boy my age has recently passed away, and I've been thinking a lot about death. Like, we're going to die one day, I know that. But what's freaking me out is that there might be no other life after this one. That one day I will just cease to exist and will never return. It freaks me out because I don't know what's going to happen next. Like, I could die tomorrow, and it's been making me wonder what any of this is all for. If we're going to die, why is everyone always stressed and trying so hard to be something? It makes me wonder, is anything even real? What a profound question, what an outstanding question, thoughtful question, and one that is common, that we all have, and probably even still continue to have to this day. The whole idea of death and dying, and that's one of the universal patterns that we're going to address. We're kind of making a departure this morning to talk about this current event that's taking place, but that is one of the universal patterns, life and death, that whole cycle of life and death that we've all had questions about, doubts about, concerns about, wondered about. And so I want to kind of address her question, really there's several questions within what she wrote to me. First, there is nothing like the death of someone close to us that we love, that we care about, that we're affiliated with, that we know, that conjures up thoughts about our own mortality. we all at some time, probably several times, multiple times throughout our experience in this three-dimensional form, think about the event that we call death. And so that's perfectly natural. She says in her question that she knows that we're all going to die. But her concern, or what's freaking her out, is she's not certain about what is going to happen. Yeah, you're right, Theresa. So many people have never been taught about life and death. That's very true. That she's not certain about what is going to happen after we die. Now, for a human certainty, a scientific certainty, okay, no one can give you a definitive answer. And that's something that you probably won't hear very many spiritual leaders or preachers or anyone else say to you. But I'm going to tell you that from a scientific, biological standpoint, no one can give you a scientific, definitive answer. We scientifically, biologically know that you are born and that at some point you do what we call die. There's death. Okay? You're born, you live, you die. That's a fact. And everything experiences this has this experience. You're born, it's born, it lives, it dies. Okay? But not everyone understands that it is only the top side or one side of the experience, and that in order for it to be a cycle, what we call the circle of life or the cycle of life, it can't just be one-sided. You're born, you live, you die, because then that would mean the end. You're born, you live, you die. Time moves on, eternity moves on, but you cease to be. Okay? In order for it to be a cycle, then it has to be circular. You're born, you live, you die, you're born again, you live, you die, you're born, you live, you die. And it has to be to continue. Now, what evidence do we have or reason, logical reason for believing, that's good, Diana, that there is a continuation or that this cycle even exists? Because we can definitively say from science and biology and physiology and physics that everything that exists in the cosmos, in this world, in even us rather, is energy. When you boil it down to the granular level, everything is energy. And physics teaches that energy is neither created nor destroyed. If we are completely and totally energy, and everything is energy, and if energy cannot be destroyed, we know that for a scientific fact, then the only thing that is left is for energy to take on a different form. It ceases to exist as one particular form, but it does not cease to exist. It takes on a new form. It transitions to something different. Because we are energy, spirit, force. All of these terms are synonymous. The scientific term is energy. The spiritual term is spirit. That we are all spirit. That we are all this force, this source, this energy that takes on a form, a three-dimensional form of existence in this earth realm that exists as that form is constantly in a state of change, metamorphosis. That's what we call aging, and being transitioning from one state to another, because all energy is in motion. Energy is never stagnant. It is always moving. The spirit is always moving. Okay, this energy, this force, this source is always moving, transitioning, transforming, transmuting into different forms. At an age of maturity or completion, then that energy transitions out of this shell. That's human body is a shell. This shell then begins to break down at the molecular level and returns to its original form, which is dust. Or, dust, not dirt, dust, particles. Okay? And the spirit that inhabited the form now takes on a different existence, either as pure energy without form, okay, until it takes on a different formation. Now, as spiritual people, this energy, this spirit, this force, this source, we choose to call God. Okay? Ultimate energy, ultimate mind, divine mind, it is divine. We are a divine expression of that ultimate energy that has individualized itself in three-dimensional form. When we enter this three-dimensional form, we do so for a period of time yet to be determined, not by the source itself, but by us. We don't really know until we leave this form and return back to our original state as pure energy in oneness with the source of energy that we all emanate from, until we enter three-dimensional form again. It is the belief, and here is the faith, where faith comes in, that energy, that source is intelligent. We believe that source, that energy, that spirit is intelligent, that it is divine. Divinity being defined as all-knowing, all-powerful, ever-present, and always active. Omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniactive. Those are the essentials of divinity. And that because we are divine, we are individuations of that divine energy, then we possess the same essentials within us as being all-powerful, all-knowing, always ever-present, and always active, creating, cultivating, okay, ever-changing, always in movement. That when we transition, transmute, transform out of this three-dimensional form, we return to our original form or state of existence as pure energy or pure spirit. Please don't get hung up on the semantics. Okay? The second part of it is that she says that if we're all going to die, if we could all die tomorrow, then it makes me wonder, what is all of this for? And if we're all going to die, then why is everyone trying so hard to be something? And it makes me wonder if anything is real. Okay? Oh. Yes. Diana says, some people say these babies act like they've been here before, and I say they have. You're absolutely right. We all have. And then she goes on to say, without form, could this energy move? It absolutely does. Okay? It always does. Energy always takes on, well, not always. Energy takes on form in order for it to experience itself. This is going to sound complicated. In the beginning, before the beginnings began, before anything, before form, there was just energy. This energy, entity, source, being, spirit, God, that we call it, was all there was. I think I talked about this in our last session, but I'm going to repeat it again anyway. That energy, source, or spirit, God, was all there was. And while God knew itself to be all that there was, and all that there was God, it could not truly know itself experientially, because it was all that there is, all that there was, and all that there was not. You cannot know all that is unless there is all that is not. So in order for all there is to know itself, it had to allow or create all that is not. It is the is not paradigm or paradox that exists. It is the ultimate beginning of the polarity that is necessary for experiential existence. So the all that there is was here and there, and was all that was in between here and there. Because there cannot be here and there without there being an in between. But in order, if the all that is the here, there, and all that is in between, it cannot experience itself, it cannot know itself experientially unless there is here and there. And that space that it occupies in between is for itself, while here and there exist separately. So the all of everything, the all that is, began to divide itself, individualizing itself into all that it is not. And so that it did this, so that it could experience itself, rather than knowing itself only conceptually, but to know itself experientially, it allowed itself to exist in individual forms so that the all of everything would know itself beyond the conceptual, but the experiential. And so the all of everything had to create all that it was not in order for it to know itself experientially. That is where humanity, as well as other life forms and beings come into existence, as well as other dimensions and worlds come into being. We often are focused on our own little world as if we are the only one that exists in the universe, and we're not. It's the epitome of arrogance to think of ourselves as the only existing intelligent beings that exist in the world or in the universe. That's ridiculous. We are not. And so life begins. Now, there are multiple accounts of how this takes place. The biblical account is probably the one most well known, which is an allegory. It is not literal. Okay, there was not a literal 7 days of creation, because even in the narrative, there were not days and nights until after the first day. So what was happening before then? So we've already had the conversation about time being an illusion. But the narrative, or the analogy gives this whole idea of how God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of the Lord moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light," and goes on and talk about how God divided the firmament, and he divided the waters which were above the firmament from the waters which were below the firmament, and it was so. And he divided, and he created the dry land, and he created the vegetation and the birds and all of these other things. And then finally on the sixth day, he created, he didn't create, he formed man from the dust of the earth. He does not create man in the Genesis narrative. He does not create man on the sixth day. He forms man on the sixth day. He creates man in John chapter 1. In the beginning, God. In the beginning was the Word, rather. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the term that's used there for word in the original language is the term logos. The word logos literally means the thought, the idea, or the concept. So in the beginning, God had a thought, an idea, or a concept. The thought, idea, and concept was with God because the thought and concept and idea was God. God could not be separated from itself. Okay? And then that thought became flesh. That thought, that idea, that concept, the word, the logos became flesh. Okay? So God did not create, or this energy, this source did not create a world and then create man to put it in. God created, or this source, this energy created mankind, had a thought, an idea, a concept of mankind, and then created a world in order for its thought, its word, its concept, its idea to become flesh. Why? So that the all of everything, this source, this energy, this God, could now know itself, not just conceptually, but experientially. So mankind and all life forms, all life forces, all beings that exist across the multiverse, we only have the account, the analogical account of this one, are for the same purpose, so that God can continuously experience and express itself in form, to know itself experientially and not just conceptually. And so in Genesis, God forms, that is, puts together a form in order for its thought, idea, concept, logos, word to become flesh. And he breathes into this form the breath of life, Okay? The breath of life, the nephesh. Man becomes a living nephesh, a living suke in the Greek. In the Hebrew, it's nephesh. In the Greek, it's suke. A living psyche, a living consciousness, consciously aware of what? Of itself. And God then begins to know itself, not just conceptually, but to know itself experientially. And this begins the cycle of life, the circle of life, if you will. Now, since God, the original source, cannot be created nor destroyed, exists perpetually, then the cycle of it experiencing and knowing itself experientially and expressing itself never ends. Never ends. Well, how does it never cease? How does it never end? Because it continuously allows itself to be put into form for it to experience and express itself. And it has multiple simultaneous experiences and expressions in the earth, across the multiverse, constantly knowing itself experientially, coming to know itself more and more and more through every human, animal, plant, and other objects that exist across the multiverse, through all of these formations over periods of millions of years, and continues to do so. So that when we transition out of this form, we return to our original state until we decide, in co-creation with God again, to either re-enter this form, re-enter a form, when I say this form, I'm talking about a human form, this form or another, in another dimension, as another type of being, so that God can continue the experience or the adventure of knowing itself experientially and expressing itself in you, through you, as you. So you don't cease to exist. Death, as we understand it, or as is defined by humanity, as it is defined, I'm going to put that comment up in a minute, Diana. As defined by humanity, it doesn't exist. It's an anomaly. It's not even an anomaly. It's an illusion. We don't die. We never die. We have eternal life. Everyone has eternal life. We don't die. We simply change forms. We transition. Okay? Humanity has this habit of thinking of death in a very fatalistic, final way, that it's just the end. It is not. Because scientifically we know that because we are pure energy, we can't simply cease to exist. The body can. But who we are, what we are, cannot. That energy source continues to exist and has exists. Here's the thing. You didn't just come into existence when you were born. You've been in existence before time began and will continue to be in existence until time is no more. Okay? So she says, it makes me wonder, is anything real? Well, it depends on how you define real. There is reality, and then there is the illusion or the dream. We are living in the dream. The reality is our true existence as energy or spirit. Okay? This is a good analogy that Diana gives here. Let me just put it on screen. She says, I watched the movie Doctor Strange and the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse produced by Marvel, and it left me thinking Hollywood was on to something. And then I started thinking why some people knows of this reincarnation and others don't, like Quantum Leap. It's very good. There are a lot of people who are on to something, and even they are not fully aware of what they're on to. And why some people know and some don't is because it's not commonly talked about or taught. As a matter of fact, it's usually a subject that we avoid, and that when discussed in religious circles is used to manipulate people and frighten them into obedience. That's very good. Theresa says that in the narrative, God told Adam to replenish the earth, so there had to be something before that. That's right. In that narrative, in the analogy, it even hints to the idea that there had to be some existence prior to Adam and Eve. There had to be someone or something. Because we've been taught we die and in hell we live to... Yes, Lord, that whole idea has been floating around for quite some time. Okay. Hey, Kamoria, I was looking for you, girl. Glad you're here. Spirit is eternal. Reality is an interpretation. I like that. That's good right there. You better write that one down and copyright it before I take it, because I might take that one. That's good. Spirit is eternal. Reality is an interpretation. That is good. Yeah, you better copyright that. Put a trademark on it, because Miles might have to take that one right there. So, and we're going to talk more about that, because I want to talk about that whole pattern of life and death. As we get back to universal patterns, we will talk about it more extensively. But I want to take some time and address the question of my goddaughter. I don't want you to think that your life is futile, that it has no meaning, that it has no purpose. It absolutely does. You are here for a reason. We are all here for a reason, for a purpose. Our ultimate general purpose is for God to experience itself, to know itself experientially and beyond just the conceptual, to know itself experientially and to express itself in our three-dimensional form. That's the general purpose for all humanity and all existence. Okay? But each of us individually have a purpose, have a reason. And that purpose is tied and tethered to us as a soul being, because it is also for us to experience, to know ourselves experientially and to express ourselves in three-dimensional form, to fulfill that, to truly come to know ourselves as a divine individuation of God, and what that entails, what that encompasses, what that means, and to learn how to be God in the flesh, to be more God than flesh, instead of more flesh than God. Okay? Now, the whole idea of, well, why is everyone trying so hard to be something? Well, we're really not trying to be something. That is a mindset that has been handed down to us and propagated over the centuries and years. That's not the purpose of life. It's not trying to be something. It is recognize who I am already being and becoming as a divine expression of God. That the be something, as in careers or a title, don't really define who I am. They are the choices that I choose to experience and express in form, but they don't define me or you. So it's why it's so important that you're not so focused on achieving a particular goal, a title, or a position, but more on enjoying the experience of being and becoming as you navigate life in this three-dimensional form. That's why it's more important that you enjoy your journey, that you do what you are passionate about, that you care about, than it is to just try and make money. Okay? So I could talk the entire broadcast about that one thing I just about have. It's been 41 minutes and we haven't even gotten to actual topic that I advertised, but I want to get to it because that's important as well. So Gloria, you'll probably get your wish this morning that we'll go much longer than our normal time. Okay? All right. Anyone have any other comments or questions on that subject before I move on? Because I want to talk about Israel, Palestine, Hamas, and the war that's going on, and why it's important and why we should pay attention, and how we center ourselves in the right place or the right position or a better position. And we don't buy into some of the propaganda that's being floated around. Okay. I don't see any questions coming up, so I'm going to go on. All right. So as everybody's been watching. I'm sure you've been watching. You can't turn on your television without hearing about this war that's taking place right now in the land of Israel, Palestine, between the it's really, they try and say it's between the Israelis and Hamas, but it's really through about the Israelis and Palestinians, and Hamas being just one small offshoot of the Palestinian people. I want you to keep in mind that as we have this conversation, we are talking about people on both sides. We are talking about people. We are not talking about animals. We're not talking about creatures. We're not talking about inanimate objects. We are talking about spirits being human. We are talking about soulish expressions of God, divine expressions of God, vehicles and vessels of God, of the source of the all of everything, living and being and experiencing and becoming. I say that because unfortunately much of the rhetoric and propaganda around this particular event taking place seeks to dehumanize one side or the other in order to justify the behavior of one side or the other. It seeks to dehumanize. You see, because in order to stomach some of the atrocities and horrendous things that are taking place in the name of the Lord, or in the name of God, or in the name of what is right or righteous, you have to somehow make the other side less human and therefore less worthy of dignity or respect or love. That is an absolute fact. So in the beginning of this conversation, we need to establish that we are talking about a conflict between essential, vital, living, vivacious human beings, and that none are more worthy of life than the other. None. This brings me to what is the number one point, which is the substratum of what a number of people hold to be the justification for the actions on their part. It is the idea of being chosen. God's chosen people. Okay, I know that, let me just say from the beginning, I know this is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of disagreement, and it's okay to disagree. You don't have to agree with anything that I say. I know that I put myself in probably a minimal amount of danger with some very powerful people and organizations, because they want to swat down anything that does not 100% align with their train of thought. You are either pro-Israel or you're against Israel. You are either pro-Palestine or you're against Palestine. It is not that simple. Okay? So, but because I'm not a big fish in this pond, I'm just a small little tiny fish in this pond. I'm not too worried about them, because they really could care less about the little 10, 15 people that are listening to my live. You know, I don't have the audience of thousands upon thousands or millions of people listening to me. So they probably could care less, but it will ruffle a few feathers, you know, on the smaller scale. And I'm not here to ruffle your feathers. I am here to have the conversation. The whole idea behind God having a chosen people is ridiculous. Let me go ahead and just put that out there from the very jump street. It is ridiculous and contradictory. It makes no common sense, no logical sense in the scope of in light of what we say about God. The same people, Christians mostly, who say God is no respecter of persons, will with the same breath say that God has a chosen people, the Jews, the Israelites, and the Israelis say that about themselves, and that everybody else is not God's chosen people. And then when Christianity, they say, well, it's Israel. And then those who believe in Jesus, accept Jesus as their Savior, baptized, saved, and baptized with the Holy Ghost and fire, they are also chosen people. Now, that right there should set off alarm bells for you, and should have caused most of you to start questioning right there. Why is there a distinction between the chosen if they're both chosen? Because here's the contradiction. First of all, if God is no respecter of persons, how can anyone be chosen? By making a choice, you become a respecter of persons. You are elevating one group above other groups. You are placing a value on one that's greater than the other. Then we got the two chosen groups, the Christians and the Jews. And the Christians will say to you without even a blink, without a blink, Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. No man can come to the Father, God, they draw that distinction, except through Jesus. If you don't accept Jesus, you are doomed to hell. Well, unless you're a Jew. Because if you're Jewish, then you're God's chosen people. Well, that you're the exception to the rule. Because you do realize that the Jewish people do not see Jesus, accept Jesus as the Messiah. But they're the ones who are chosen. And then there's the Christian chosen that has a extra caveat that in order for you to be a part of the Christian chosen, you got to accept Jesus. But if you happen to be by virtue of simple birth, okay, born a Jew, oh well, then you don't have to accept Jesus. You're chosen. By virtue of the fact that you were born into a Jewish family, to Jewish people, you're inherently chosen. You're the seed of Abraham. Make it make sense. It is a complete contradiction. Okay? It is a complete contradiction. Now, of course, the Bible sets aside the Jewish people, the children of Israel, as being chosen. Wonder why that is. Could it be that because the authors of the Bible were Jewish people? No, that can't be. Could it? That they just determined, since we're writing from the Jewish perspective, to carve out a space for the Jewish people to make them special to God. And therefore chosen, somehow elevated above everyone else. See, the issue comes back to the fundamental issue that most Christians have, and that is that they believe that that book, that collection of stories, analogies, narratives called the Bible, is the absolute word of God, instead of the words of men about God, giving men's human perspective and experiences about God. That it's not definitive, it is not infallible, but that it is one perspective about God. It contains principles, practices, and patterns that are absolute, but it is not the Word of God. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so the whole idea, the concept that the Jewish people, Israelis, are somehow divinely chosen, special, better than any other human being on earth because they are specifically selected by God. Why? For what reason? Are they just somehow more like God than anybody else? More divine than anyone else? Have more of a connection to God? Have a corner of the market on God than anyone else? Then that would make God have an ego. Have you ever thought about that? Are you saying that you believe God has an ego? Absolutely not. It's nonsense. Okay? It is absolute nonsense. How do you in one breath say that the Jews are chosen and that Christians are chosen, yet to be a Jew, you simply have to be born into a Jewish family? But to be a Christian, you have to be born and then born again by accepting a Jesus that the Jews reject. It's nonsense. Okay? It is nonsense. You're right, Mike. It is a lot of contradictions and confusion. Man needed a physical example, Jesus, not God. But that's a whole nother conversation right there. Okay? Are you understanding what I'm saying? Okay, so this idea of being the Jewish people, which now seems to be translated as the Israelis, and that is only the Israelis as they exist now, because you do know that the original Jewish people were not the people that claim Judaism now. They were melanated people like you and I. That's a whole nother conversation as well. But we're not talking about that. We're just talking about the idea of some being chosen. John, good to see you on here, man. Glad that you're doing well. The actual authors of the New Testament was written by the Roman noble Pisios. Yes, family. And the authors of the Old Testament were the so-called Jews who didn't come into the scene until the 11th century. I was just talking about that. If you have no history, then you must invent one. Absolutely. Because the people who are considered Jewish people now are not the original Jews. That's a historical fact. Okay, the historical Jews were melanated, dark-skinned, black folk. Okay, now that has morphed over time. Okay, and whoever wins the war, whoever conquers, gets to write the history. And that's what's happened for centuries, millennia. Whoever wins the war, whoever's in power, they get to write the history and shape the narrative. Just because it is repeated over and over again and even written in a history book doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate history. All you got to do is look at the crap that Prager University is putting out right now. Lord have mercy, that stuff that they put out and under the guise of history is just crap. And we all know that. We all know that, okay? I mean, they're not even going back very far. They're trying to rewrite recent history that there are people still living who lived through it, have memory of it. And they're trying to rewrite that with Prager University. Okay, so that's a whole nother conversation as well. But so this idea, the concept of the Jews being chosen, gives God an ego. Because when there is choice, when someone is chosen, we never think about, the polarity there. We never think about the duality of that statement. If someone is chosen, if a group of people are chosen, then it means that everyone else is not chosen. So you can't say God is no respecter of person if he has people that are chosen and those who are not chosen. And I understand. I know the theological argument that comes up because I used to make it. That's the sovereignty of God. That God can do whatever it wants and whatever it chooses and whatever it decides and whatever it decides is just. Okay, I'll grant you that piece. But if that is the case, then you're either saying, you are either saying that the choice is immoral, or the God that made the choice is illogical. If you're going to wrap yourself around the whole sovereignty piece, then the choice would either be immoral, but if sovereignty is the undergirding, no, because it's God, it's sovereign, it's just, then you have to say the God that made the choice is illogical. You understand what I'm saying? Diana raises a good question. She's like, so if we were a part of the not chosen group, what good are we in the earth? It's like, what purpose would we serve? What would be the point in living? I'm not chosen, so I may as well just cease to exist. I'm destined for hell. I'm destined for destruction. What's the point of living? It's not logical. Okay? It's not logical. Yes, that's coffee. It's coffee, I promise. It's coffee. It's coffee. I might need something strong after this conversation. Oh, I know what you're asking. Is it real? Not the mushroom. Haven't gotten it yet. I'm waiting on it to arrive. But when it gets here, I'm going to switch over. I'm not going to say I'm going to switch. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. We'll see how it tastes. Okay? But right now, it's just good old dark roast. All right. So this idea of being chosen, that God having some selected group that is somehow elevated above everyone else. And again, in Christianity, Christians say that they are chosen. We're the chosen. They believe the Jews are chosen too, but they just have a different criteria. Their criteria is simply birth. In Christianity, you got to be saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost. Then you're chosen. But even within that circle of the saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost, there are some who are more chosen than others. Because if you happen to be a part of the fivefold, the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher, or bishop, cardinal, whatever they call themselves now, you are a little more chosen than other people, because then, God deals with you and shows you things that he won't show nobody else. You see how absurd it begins to get? And then with even within the ranks of that fivefold, they divide themselves as, well, the apostles at the top. And, well, no, there's apostles, and then there's chief apostles. Now, that's above the apostles. No. But there is not just chief apostles, but then there is a cardinal chief apostle that's above the chief apostle, that's above the apostle, that's above the prophet. But then you got not just prophet, but then the master prophet, as well as the prophet in the room, and the prophet to the nation, and then a prophet to a particular section. And then, all of that's just ego. None of it has anything to do with God. It all has to do with ego. That's just true. That is just true. That's just ego. Like you can have and I've heard people explain the whole master prophet thing around the idea that there are master plumbers and then there are the apprentice. Sure. Absolutely. If you speak from that context, wonderful. But if you speak in terms of capacity, ability, spirituality, existence, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. Okay? And so, there are doctors, and different specialties of doctors. So sure, there can be apostles in different specialties of apostleship. And same thing for prophets and so on and so forth. If you want to break it down like that within that context, have at it, Jack. Have fun with it. Run with it. But it doesn't make you any more special or anointed or connected to God than anyone. The other issue with the chosen moniker is this. It feeds into the narrative and the illusion of separation. Please understand what I just said. It feeds into the narrative and the illusion of separation. The idea that there is any separation between God and man, and that there is any separation between man and man. If we all emanate from one source, God, we have our genesis, we live, move, and have our being from the one source, God, Allah, whatever terminology you want to use, source, energy, the all of everything. And we are all individuations, images, likenesses, expressions of the one source. And that the body, the form, without the presence of spirit is dead, ceases to function and exists. Then that connection is universal. We are all. You cannot exist outside of God or the all of everything. It is the all of everything. So there is no me without it. Because I and God are one. And if I and God are one and there is no separation, then that means you and God are one. Because I'm not special. I'm connected to God. I am somehow God in the flesh, but you're not? Of course, that's ridiculous. So then if we are all individual, unique expressions of God, vehicles, vessels, through which God can know itself experientially and express itself, then I am not only inextricably connected to God, living and existing as God in form, I am also inextricably connected to every other life form that exists as an expression and a vehicle of experience for that same God. One God, multiple billions of expressions in this three-dimensional experience and across the multiverse. There is no separation. But if through the ego of the soul, we invent and then promote the idea of separation, which is what the idea of being chosen does, then it allows me not to see the person across the table for me as a different expression of me, as a different version of me, as a different experience of me in form. I begin to see it as another or an other. Then I can begin to devalue it as less than me because I don't see it as me. It is the epitome of the purported expression of Jesus, who says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. The concept or the idea behind that is, and he says it very clearly, the concept and the idea behind it is you have to have the same love, the same affection, attachment to every other being, because he definitively defines our neighbor as everyone and everything, as you do yourself. Why? Because it is a different form of yourself, a different expression of God in a different form, but still emanating from the same Spirit. So how, in the name of common sense, does God choose one form of itself above another form of itself? And yet, in the same Bible text, a writer proclaims, God cannot deny itself. Yet God is choosing to deny itself by choosing one expression of itself above another and damning one expression of itself to eternal damnation while allowing another image and likeness of itself to live in bliss. Do you see the ridiculousness of the idea of separation? And ladies and gentlemen, it is that illusion of separation that is the substratum of all human conflict and every single war that exists. If we really grasped, understood, and embraced the idea that every other individual that exists on the planet is an expression or a different version of me, that we are all an unique expression of one source, then it changes your perception of others around you and certainly changes your behavior. But when you don't see them as the same as you are able then to elevate yourself through the ridiculous ideology of being chosen and dehumanize, devalue the other, and thereby justify killing, murdering, torturing, raping, and other heinous acts against them. And what is taking place right now and has taken place historically in this land that is now called Israel and Palestine has been the market expression of people dehumanizing and devaluing other people. Divine beings seeing other beings across the table from them or across the landscape from them as less than the divine being that they consider themselves to be. The idea that we are chosen and that thereby being chosen by the all of everything, we believe from the Jewish historians who wrote the Bible and told us that God gave these chosen people this particular land, that we are thereby entitled, and others are less entitled. This is supported and promulgated within Jewish circles and Christian circles from the very book that you hold dear. I know I'm finna make some folk really mad with finna. About to make some people really upset with me. Because in that book, God is painted, a portrait of God is painted with this idea that God has absolutely no problem killing entire nations of other divine beings for the sake of the chosen few. He even tells them throughout the battles in Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and throughout all of the Old Testament in 1st and 2nd Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Kings, to go into different lands. This is God we're talking about. God that is purported to have made these decisions we know cannot be true. To go into a land of innocent men, women, children, babies, and kill them all. Go into AI and destroy everyone and everything they were told. And then the narrative goes on to say that after the war was won, they went up against AI rather, and they were beaten by this little small nation of AI. They come back beaten, battered, and bruised, and Joshua's trying to figure out why, and he goes to God, and then it's revealed to him that there's the accursed thing among you, and he searches between all the people in Israel and finds Achan, and Achan has some of the Babylonian gold and jewelry and other things that are hidden in the dirt and in the ground, and says, because he took these things, he disobeyed God and took these things from the Babylonians, and put them in the ground. Now God cursed all of Israel, and they were caused to lose the war against Ai. Watch what the writer of the narrative says then. Then, by the command of God, I want you to listen to the ridiculous idea that people have bought into and said that this has to be literally true. If it is literally true, then God is a monster. Because God says to Joshua, take Achan, his wife, and his children, put them outside of the camp and stone them to death, and then burn them and all their belongings with fire. In the name of the Lord, so that I can give you the victory to go conquer other divine beings, because they're of lesser value than you. Now, don't you can argue logic with me, but please don't try and argue this theological thing with me, because I've probably forgotten more about that Bible than you'll ever know. So please don't try and argue with me on that, because that's exactly what the story says. Okay? Go into Jericho and kill everybody. Now, okay, well, maybe they had been attacked. Maybe they had been, the Jewish people had been attacked and even oppressed by some of the men or the governmental structure in the people in Jericho, which there's really no record of that. It was just that they had come to believe God wanted them to have that land. And it didn't matter that there were other people living there. Are you getting the pattern? Are you getting the pattern? It didn't matter that anybody or other people were living there, had been dwelling there. They hadn't had any problems. They hadn't bothered with any of the people of the Jewish nation. It was simply that they believed, because the prophet told them God wanted them to have that land, so they became less valuable to God than the chosen. Now you go over, march around the walls, wall come tumbling down, and when the walls come down, go in and kill everybody. Men, women, babies. I just want you to see where the Israeli mindset and the mindset of many Christians come from and how they justify it. Because they have a book that lays out a pattern of this behavior throughout the centuries. Go in and kill everybody and take the land. It's the will of God. What? What? Really? Is that really the picture we want of God? And so now what happens when the people that are devalued begin to think God's telling them to take land as well, to go in and kill everybody, because this is your right, God-given right, to have this land? What gives one person's divine revelation from God more validity than the other one? And since we have accepted as a basis that God values one life above other lives, then the argument can be made on either side. And now you have conflict and war. There is not a war that has ever been fought among all of humanity throughout history where both sides did not believe they were listening and following the instructions of God. Ooh, ooh. Lord have mercy. Lord, Lord, let every war, every conflict, every atrocity that has taken place in humanity has taken place because on both sides, both sections or factions believed they had a divine mandate from God to dehumanize and devalue the other side. Slavery is the perfect example. There was not one slave owner that was not Christian. Look, did you? In America, there was not one slave owner who did not believe that they had a divine right to enslave, torture, rape, mutilate black people. Are you hearing what I'm saying? It is when we began to anthropomorphically impose human ego onto the divine that we are able to come up with these concepts. And so the pattern was laid out and has been followed by humanity throughout the centuries, for millennia. Both sides believing they have a mandate and command from God to devalue other divine expressions of God because they were the chosen. Ooh. Yeah. Y'all can get mad. It's all right. I already know that. You know, a lot of folks going, oh, they go with that crazy Miles again. He come with all that nonsense. But prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. All in the name of God. Slavery was done in the name of Jesus, in the name of God, in the name of all that was holy and righteous. Every war, in the name of God. And since the history of the Old Testament was written from a Jewish perspective, who do you think was the victor and who was the victim? Lord have mercy. Who do you think was the good guy and who was the villain? And of course they paint themselves as the good guy. If I'm writing the story and I'm writing the narrative, then I'm going to also paint myself, my people, my culture as the good guy. That's what ego does. God has no ego. We are all equal in the sight of God because we are all divine expressions of God. None more valuable than the other. But it is the illusion of separation that allows the birthing of ego to come in and create this division and this devaluation. And so the Israelis believe they have a divine right to the land. Now, it is a fact, whether they want to accept it or not, whether people want to, embrace this or not, it is a fact that prior to 1948 and 1947 and beyond, that land was completely Palestinian. There were Jewish or Israeli settlements in 1947 and 1946 and 1945 that were there, but it had been Palestinian for ages. Hold on. Let me grab this, because there are some who are going to say, well, no, because there was really no Palestinians in 1947 and 48. They were all Arabs. That's just like saying, there was no humans. Really, the people who occupied the place, occupied the lands, were Palestinians. It was Palestine. If that was not the case, ladies and gentlemen, if they were just the Arabs that were there, then would the Arabs that exist to this day now sit on the sideline while the Israelis come in and take the land? Of course not. The Israeli settlements began to expand. Well, when there is expansion, there's also contraction. The Israelis expand, Palestinian land begins to contract. There are several maps that show this. The entire land was Palestinian. Then it becomes less and less Palestinian, part Israel, both coexisting, but not coexisting. Because you've got one group of people who believe that they are chosen, that they have been given this land by God through their father Abraham. Ooh, I'm finna really jump into it, but I'm gonna say this anyway, even if I'm not gonna go deep into it. By their father Abraham, a character that there is no definitive proof ever even existed. We don't know if that was a real person or just a cartoon character created by a writer. Whew, I know that's going to be a problem right there for some folk. Okay? And so therefore, they had been given this land, and so ego tells them it's okay. This is what God's pattern has been throughout the history recorded by our ancestors, that he killed off all the people in Ai, killed off all the people in Jericho, killed off the people in Canaan, killed off all the people, in order to give the Israelis or the Israelites this particular land. So God has no problem with us killing off these people and just taking the land. We just discovered Israel, and we're going to establish it. And then from 1948 up until now, the Palestinian territory has shrank and shrank and shrank and shrank and shrank until there's very little to no land left for the Palestinians. Now, the rhetoric that is being put forward by the Jewish community, by American media, well, really worldwide media, in most worldwide media, by Christian community, is that they're not at war with Palestine. They're at war with Hamas. Let's not be simpletons. If a land that was entirely Palestine has now been sold, shrunk to where now the Palestinians live in tiny little settlements, okay, 2 million people in Gaza, a few more in northern, what they call Israel now, but Palestine, has been shrank. Okay? So all of this has taken place over a period of time. And because you have a group of people who believe that they are ordained by God, a God who historically had no issue with killing off entire nations in order to make a place for the chosen people, then the rhetoric put forth then is to say, we're not barbaric, we're doing the will of God. And it's Hamas that's evil and wicked. Now, please, I am not pro-Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization, they say. They've murdered and mutilated babies and decapitated and cut people's heads off, women and children. Israel's done the same thing. Israel has done the same exact thing. Both sides, both egoic governments, organizations have wanted to take land, to be in control, because both believe they have a God-given right to be there. And they have both committed atrocities. There have been atrocities on both sides. It's just that Western media justifies the atrocities of the Jews while condemning the atrocities of Hamas, and then using Hamas as the scapegoat to destroy the Palestinian people. If you are just after Hamas, why so many Palestinian people being killed? Why would you turn off the water, turn off the internet, turn off all of the things vital for life for them to just be able to survive? Because you're not barbaric. You're not going after men, women, and children. You just want the terrorist group, right? Why are they allowed to exist in these little small settlements completely under your rule instead of giving them their own independence and their right to live and exist? Well, it's written in the, Hamas has written in their constitution that all Jews should die, that the state of Israel should cease to exist. Well, Israel doesn't have it written into their constitution, but they certainly have it written into their behavior. That all Palestinians are dogs and animals and less than human, and they don't have a right to exist unless they are granted the rights that we decide to give them. And what has taken place in Palestine from the Israeli people is apartheid. It is simple apartheid. It is Jim Crow. It is the same as what black people experienced in this country and continue to experience to a large degree. The exact same thing. Because you have a group of people, a group of white people, a group of Jewish people who believe that they have the God-given right to be in control. A group of white people who believe that they are God-given rights to be in control and that everyone is less than they. White supremacy, Jewish supremacy. I know this doesn't sit well with a whole lot of people. Pray for the peace of Israel. Well, yeah, of course the Jewish historian is going to write that. What do you think he was going to write? Pray for the peace of our enemies? But if you study the sacred writings of other cultures as much as you do the Bible writing, you will find that they believe God's on their side too. and have said, pray for the peace of their people. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Are you hearing what I'm saying? So the rhetoric, the propaganda that's being put forth by media pits one side against the other and puts one in the role of the good guy. The Israelis are just, they have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to their sovereignty. They have a right to their existence. And Hamas, i.e. the Palestinian people, well, they're less than. They don't have the same God-given rights as Israelis. What? Can we just leave God out of this then? Because you're making God look totally illogical, foolish, prejudiced, filled with bigotry, hatred, and heinousness. That God is a homicidal maniac, a tyrant. Can we just leave God out of this and stop lying on God, saying that God is the reason for this stuff? All of you Christian prophets running around right now, this is the sign of the time. God is, this is the will of the Lord. Go to Shande, Ketar, Redadabosia. You's a liar. Can you just please just take God out of that equation and stop lying on God and trying to make God a murderer? Trying to create God in your own image instead of recognizing that you are created in the image of God and the likeness of God. Let me go over to these comments. I've missed a bunch of them, so I'm going to go down. I never resonate with Christian teaching. It got even worse as I got older. I got so much closer to God when I stopped claiming Christianity. And you are not alone, Saul. There's so many people that didn't find God until they left the church. But it's not, and I do want to make the statement, but make the statement here that this is not just Christianity. This is all religion, period. Because every religion, one of the tenets of every religion is that we are the only ones right and everybody else is wrong. We're the only ones chosen. We have some special connection to God that nobody else has. And that is nonsense. That's your first red flag. That should be the warning signal, the flashing red light. Get as far away from that group as you possibly can. Anyone who claims that we are the only ones right and everybody else is wrong, run. I don't care whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whoever. Run. That is cultic thinking. Okay? I'm so glad you're teaching on this today because I seriously needed more knowledge. I'm glad that you're tuned in. John says, there's no empirical, verifiable evidence that anyone mentioned in the Bible ever existed. Yeah, the Bible is an allegory based on fables and make-believe. It is an allegory. Well, John, you really want to open up a whole nother can of worms. But it's true. Most of the stuff that's written in the Bible is not even original. It was stolen from Cashapp. Not stolen, borrowed, retold. Stories handed down through the oral tradition, and the narrative of the story depends on the person telling the story. If the Egyptian Kemetic community is telling the story, then the hero is the Egyptian Kemetic people. If it's the Ethiopian people that are telling the story, if it is the Nigerians that are telling the story, then whoever's telling the story, they become the hero. And so the Bible is written by the Jewish people, and so they retell the story, but they make themselves the hero. That's just That's human nature. That's the human egoic nature. Back when I was pastoring the church, I used to do marital counseling all the time. And one thing is absolutely true. If you really want to know what happened in a relation, what's going on in a relationship, sit down and listen to the two parties, but do it with the understanding that when each of them tell the story, they're going to make themselves the hero, the victim, and the other person the villain and the evil person. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. They're both responsible. But I guarantee you, depending on who's telling the story, that's who's going to be the person who is the hero and the victim of such atrocities. And I'm just defending myself, and I'm justified in my behavior. Are you hearing me? Okay. So, and that's what's happened with the Bible. That's what's happening with religion. That's what happens with every war that America has ever been involved in. We believe we are justified. We had good reason for going over killing all of those people. We had good reason to. Yes, we were after one particular person or one particular group, Osama bin Laden and all of those who work with ISIS and the terrorist organizations. But if we have to kill a bunch of innocent people in order to get to them, you got to break a few eggs if you're going to make an omelet. But God is on our side. Justice and right is on our side. Can we just leave God out of it, please? Can we just stop lying? And just call it what it is, ego. Not God. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Woo. Mike says, it is bold of Israel to airstrike another country like Lebanon and then expect other countries to help them out of it every single... Exactly. Okay? Yes, extremists hate you and kill you in the name of God. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay? So don't, and I know I can say this. See, I can say things that, some of the other people with larger platforms are afraid to say because, in order for them to keep their platform, they got to kind of toe the line or either avoid the subject altogether, because if they speak on it, then it could be taken from them and that affects their money. so it's like, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, all the rest of them, they know they got to toe a certain line. All that stuff about, we just report the news as it is. No, they don't. Every single news organization tailors their news to make sure that they don't upset certain groups, because they understand that if you upset this group, they can destroy you. They have strong lobbyists, especially in this country. They can destroy you. In a free market society, oh yeah, you better tailor to your customer base who has the most influence and power. So while you have a few stray voices here and there on all of the major networks who will try and speak a little bit of truth, they know that they can go up to right up to the line, but don't cross it, or you'll no longer be a broadcaster. They will fire you in a hot millisecond. Every congressman, every senator go up to a certain level point. They'll make the point about Palestinians are people too, and we need to be careful, and we don't But let me preface it by saying, I stand with Israel. I am 100% pro-Israel, and that is their God-given right to defend themselves, and their God-given right. Ain't got nothing to do with God. That's got to do with politics. Politics and power. That's a fact. So you got to filter the rhetoric coming through your television on both sides. Filter it. And know that you're being sold a product. Okay? In the United States, it's pro-Israel. If you're in Ireland, it's pro-Palestinian. Okay? It depends on where you're getting your news from. Just like if in America, CNN, MSNBC, pro-democracy. Okay? Fox, pro-nonsense. Fairy tales, fantasies, and the Republican Party, extremists. It's like those who are so up in arms about the Hamas being a terrorist organization wreaking havoc, yet they are anti-reparations because of the terroristic behavior of white people sanctioned by the government in this country for centuries. Oh, we can't hold up people today responsible for what their we ain't talking about your ancestors, man. I'm not that old. I remember segregation. That's not an ancestral thing. I'm not an ancestor. I'm still here. And there are people way older than me. There are people who are over 100 years old. So this is not they try and paint the picture. That's why whenever they show you pictures of things that took place in the 60s, they always show it in black and white. They never show it in color because they want you to think that this has been hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They don't want you to think that this is recent history in order to create and keep the illusion going. Are you understanding what I'm saying, y'all? Let me see what John's got here. On what I believe his story is. Here's my belief and opinion about the term we call history. Thought for today. Okay, so you put your whole... Okay, I'm not going to read through all of this, John. You got your whole newsletter up there. So those of you who are interested in reading John's newsletter, you can. I will ask that you don't try and use my platform to promote your own newsletter. I appreciate what you have to say. You're a very intelligent person. I love our conversations. If you want to participate and have the conversation here, that's wonderful. But not to use it as a promotional vehicle for your own. Okay? Is that ego? Yeah, it sure is. Okay? But I appreciate that, though. I do. History is told by those who are in power. And whoever's telling the story always makes themselves out to be the victor. That is a fact. And that is where we are. Okay? So a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the propaganda that we are hearing, especially here in the United States, is slanted. And it is slanted deliberately because of our, 1, systemic racism, 2, the idea that this country is founded upon religious ideology of Christianity, which is nonsense. That's just like saying Columbus discovered this place with all of these people who were already here. and really didn't even set foot in America. He got lost. That's a whole nother conversation. And so everything now has been shaped by a narrative that fits a particular ideology to justify the behavior, no matter how heinous, of the one telling the story. And so I understand the Jewish people's belief that they are justified in using whatever force and whatever, means available to them to quote unquote defend themselves from the people whose land they took because they were justified in taking because it was promised to them by God? I understand that perspective, but I guarantee you that the Palestinian people, if you listen to their conversations, believe that historically the land belongs to them and that it was given to them by God and that God chose them to be there and that they have the right to use whatever means is necessary to them to take control or retake their homeland that was justifiably theirs. Both sides believe that they are acting on the will of God. Both sides believe that they are supported by the all of everything. Both sides are absolutely wrong. They are wrong. Murder, torture, decapitation, these kinds of heinous acts, theft, are wrong no matter who's doing it. It's wrong for Palestinians, it's wrong for Israelis, it's wrong for white folk, it's wrong for black folk, it's wrong across the board. We are one humanity. And the sooner we recognize that and start to deal with every other person as another individuation of God, a different version of myself, not someone I'm separated from, but I'm connected to, the sooner we're able then to begin to come to peaceful resolutions. But as long as we believe that one is God-sanctioned and another is not, then it's very easy to justify the devaluation of another person or another race of people. That's why here in America, especially white people, are so anti-Islamic and anti-Muslim and anti-black and anti-any person of color. Because in their mind, they are justified in believing that we are somehow superior to everyone else by virtue of our whiteness, which is another invention. Okay, whiteness hadn't been around forever. It was invented. By virtue of our whiteness, then we are somehow better. And so how we treat them or mistreat them, what we give them and take away from them, is totally justified by God. You do realize, like I said earlier, while they were hanging, mutilating, torturing, raping, capturing, enslaving black people in this country, the same people were praying, testifying, shouting, giving praise, and worshiping in the name of the Lord. Hello? You do realize that the church, what is called the church fathers, and you have to start asking yourself the question, why are all the biblical church fathers, historical church fathers like St. Augustine and Polycarp and Irenaeus and so on and so forth, every single one of them white, or at least historically painted as white? Why did they paint all the biblical characters as white, especially all the patriarchal saints as white? White men. And everybody else were others. That's not an accident. That's deliberate. That's on purpose. How else can you justify the dehumanization of other people? You have to think that you are somehow more valuable to the divine creator of all that is than the others that are around you. And so they were sitting right there in their temples, in their churches, bringing in the sheaves, with black folks hanging from a tree right outside the church. or working out in the field, or just got through raping their chambermaid. But Mr. John, Mr. Buck is a good Christian man. Hello? That most of the founding fathers, which is another fallacy, calling them the founding fathers, because they didn't find anything. But anyway, founding fathers were either slave owners or pro-slavery. They had no problem in all of their lofty conversations about all men being created equal and are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Well, except for them little darkies over there now. That we ain't talking about them. Just those good Christian white folk. Them savages, them beasts over there that we rescued from themselves and brought them over here and gave them an opportunity to learn some skills. They couldn't even take care of themselves. Do you realize that the first settlers that came to this land over here, and most of them died out because they couldn't even feed themselves? Some of them resorted to cannibalism to try and survive. And if it hadn't been for the indigenous people that were already here taking mercy upon them, they would have surely died. And that when they went and they enslaved our people and brought them here, they brought them here because they had skills, abilities, intellect, and a knowledge about farming and horticulture and structure that they didn't have. They didn't capture slaves. They captured inventors and princes and creators and then enslaved them. These are all historical facts. I know they're not the ones that you learned in school, because remember, whoever the person is that's writing the narrative makes themselves the good guy and everybody else bad. And the people who have written the narratives in most of the history books are of the white persuasion, who make sure that they paint white people as the good guys. And everybody else is, less than. Are you hearing what I'm saying? All of this done in the name of God. So I cannot, in good conscience, align myself with the horrendous behavior on either side by Israel or Hamas or the Palestinian people. Because there has been heinous torture, killing, murder on both sides. And God is not on either side. Ooh, I'll say it again. God is not on either side. Because even though Christians contradict themselves and twist themselves in the knots around it, try and get around a basic premise that is found in their own Bible, that is an absolute. God is no respecter of persons. God doesn't choose sides. I said it, I'll say it again. God doesn't choose sides. We choose sides and put God on it. And both decide that God's on their side. Both have decided we're doing the will of God. Black folk believe that God was on our side. White folk believe God was on their side. God doesn't choose sides. How did all that? Because everything in this sphere of existence operates by certain divine laws. We've talked about this before. Here is the kingdom of God. Here is the laws that govern the universe. Here are the spiritual laws that are in place. Okay? We've gone through them before. Okay? Cause and effect. The law of cause and effect. There's no partiality in the law of cause and effect. There's no partiality in the law of polarity, the law of the perpetual transmutation of energy, the law of gender. There's no partiality in the law of attraction, the law of sowing and reaping. There's no partiality. There's no racial partiality, gender partiality, ethnic partiality. It is simply a law, impersonal. And man's interaction, humanity's interaction with these laws have put into effect the resulting outcomes that we are living in, the experiences that we are having. Not sanctioned by God, created by God, God choosing a side, created by humanity. And we having to live within the consequences of the reality that we have created for ourselves collectively. God hasn't chose a side. There is no side. I don't know why people find it so hard to see that someone wrote the Bible from a perspective. So how can it be law? It's a man-made set of beliefs borrowed and changed from earlier teaching. Absolutely. Okay? There's no side. God is not on Israel's side. God is not on the Palestinian side. God is not on the side of Hamas. God is not on the side of America. God is not on the side of Hezbollah. God is not on the side of France or Germany or any other country. God is not on the side of the continent of Africa or any of the 54 nations that are there. God is not on a side. God is for us. Who's us? All of us. All humanity. God is for all humanity. And all of the universe and all of nature is rooting for humanity to finally evolve to the place where we start to get it right and stop destroying each other. All the great clouds of witnesses, that's ancestral witnesses, as well as other beings across the multiverse, are watching this experiment in this three-dimensional form, rooting for us to finally evolve and recognize who we are so we'll stop killing each other and destroying this entire global community that we've been given the opportunity to experience and make full use of our divinity. There are other higher evolved beings in societies across dimensions and other dimensions that look at us in horror and wonder how we could be so primitive in our thinking. Yet we remain so. And I am of the thought, and this is really going to probably piss some people off too, that the main culprit is religion. That if we would annihilate religion, the global society would advance in leaps and bounds. We would take a quantum leap forward as a species, as divine beings. We would be so much better off if we could somehow eliminate the existence of religion across the board. All of it. Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Judaism, all of it. Because all of it feeds into the illusion of separation, which is the substratum of all of the conflict and all of the war and the hatred and the division among mankind. All of it traces back to religion in one form or another. We don't need religion. We don't, I didn't say we don't need God. We are the expression of God. You don't need religion to know God. You become a much better person, less hateful, less divisive, less territorial when you relinquish and annihilate religion from your life. I said it and I won't take it back. I became less prejudiced when I denounced Christianity and embraced God fully. Because Christianity teaches you that you are somehow better than everyone else. That you have somehow cornered the market on God, and everyone else who's not like you needs rescuing or saving. And it is your job not to proselytize in the name of your version and view of God to rescue the rescue of humanity from themselves so that they can join your elite club. And so then by definition, it's a normal progression and extrapolation that you now form a bigotry and a prejudice against every person who does not ascribe to your ideological belief. And so you have no problem sending them to hell. It's justifiable. Well, all they have to do is choose to be like us, accept Jesus like me, and then you won't go to hell. Oh, but if you do go then to hell, you will lift up your eyes. You're going to hell, and you never have to go to hell. And we justify it. We justify it in our mind. Of course, God sends them to hell. Well, it's not God sending them. They sent themselves to hell. Same pattern that's outlined in the Old Testament. Same pattern outlined in all of the other religious teachings, their religious documents. Same pattern of God saying, you're special, everybody else is not, so it's okay for you to kill them, mutilate them. It's okay for them to be destroyed because they're not like you. They don't have me on their side like you do. Are you? Come on. Come on. Come on. Logic. Common sense. Intellect. You can't really believe that that's true. That is really the reason I wanted to have this conversation, because the Israeli war with Hamas, with the people of Palestine, raises a much larger issue of the global community. This idea that we are somehow divided along these particular lines and that God has chosen a side. And therefore we are justified in how we deal with others because we are chosen and they are not. We're on the side of right. We have the angels on our side and they are the devil. Nonsense. God is not an Israeli. God is not Jewish. God is not Palestinian. God is not American. God is not French. God is not German. God is not black. God is not white. God is not Asian. God is not Christian. God is not Hindu. God is not Buddhist. God is not Muslim. God is God. And God is for us. All of us. I'll say it again. God is God. I am that I am. And God is for us. All of us. God didn't divide any of us into sides. Mankind chose sides. created this division and then pulled God in and said, God's on our side. It's a lie. It's a lie. And that lie has kept more people in bondage globally around this world than any other lie that's been told in humanity. That lie and illusion of separation. That's a fact. You can get off my platform, never listen to me again, whatever. I stand 10 toes down, 100% on that. Nah. And I am perfectly fine with you calling me cult leader, witch doctor, false prophet, and all the other names that you call me and everything else like that, even though you continue to follow me and even though many of you still inbox me in secret because you can't let the people that you in your circle know that you really do believe the things that I'm saying, because then you'll lose your church or you'll lose your position or you'll lose your title or you'll lose your following. That's fine. You go ahead on and keep living in the shadows and pretending like I'm the one that's terrible and heinous and leading people astray. But then I refuse to move off that line. God is for everyone. Everyone. And you don't need to be a Christian to know God, and you don't need to be a Muslim to know God, and you don't need to be an Islam, to be Jewish to know God, and you don't need to be a Hindu to know God, and you don't need to be any of these religions to know God. You don't need Buddha, you don't need Allah, you don't need, Allah means God. You don't need Buddha, you don't need, that's what I said, you don't need Jesus in order to know God. Ooh, I know I just lost a whole bunch of friends right then. You don't. Am I taking away from the validity of Jesus's existence and its purpose? That's a whole nother conversation to argue. I'm not trying to take away from that at all. But Buddha, Allah, Muhammad, Jesus, all of them were if they existed as people, they were existed as highly evolved people who came to give us an example of what it's like to live as God in the flesh. And then words were put into their mouth and attributed to them by the people who wrote narratives about their lives. And the narratives were shaped by the perspective of the person doing the writing. Hello, I'm telling you the truth. It's written in red, Jesus said. You don't know what Jesus said. You know what these people said that Jesus said, because every single one of those gospels that were written way more than almost 100 years after Jesus was dead. And the stories were handed down through oral tradition from one generation to the next and then recorded. That's a fact. That's a historical fact. Even your theological schools teach you that. God is for us all. Are you hearing me? I see all the comments coming up, so let me go back and they say shout it from the roof. I intend to lift up my voice like a trumpet. Lord, they're going to send me they're finna invent a new hell to send me to. No, he didn't try and use the scripture. Oh, Lord of mercy. They tickle me. Okay? In Buddhism, it's called self-cherishing, the idea that I is more important. Exactly. They don't recognize that they are sending themselves through hell through religion. The biggest hell that ever exists is the hell that is imposed upon humanity through religion. Because all the religions demand that you adhere to their dogma, their legalism, and have you jumping through all kind of hoops in order to be a good Christian, good Jew, good Buddhist, good Muslim, good. There's your hell. Because you're trying to live up to standards that you will never be able to live up to. Hello? The self-cherishing mind is the root of all suffering. Yeah. Yep. They are living in a hell on earth. That's right. So, let me go back down here, huh? How can people say God is love and then choose who they hate? Make it make sense. Please make it make sense. I heard an Israeli ministry official on the news saying that they were going to cut off the water, the food supply, and all the supply, and internet and everything, and make the lives of the Palestinian people in Gaza miserable until we can destroy Hamas. What? You're after Hamas, so we're going to make the Palestinians miserable until we can root out Hamas? And then in the same breath say, but it's not the Palestinian people. We cherish them. No. We see them as good people. It's Hamas, but we're going to punish the Palestinians until we can get to Hamas. Because Hamas is hiding amongst the Palestinians. Never mentioning that among the Israelis are the Zionists. Ooh, oh boy. Who are just as terroristic as Hamas. Oh, and I know, I saw a guy on the news earlier this morning from the Anti-Defamation League who tried to say, oh no, but all Jews are Zionists. Because what a true Zionist is the belief that all the Jewish people believe in a homeland for the Jews and that are intrinsically chosen by God. And so by virtue of their birth, you are a Zionist. Nah, that's like the Hamas trying to justify, then say that all Palestinians are Hamas. Or the Nazis saying, well, all Germans are Nazis. Get out of here with that nonsense. That's basically just a way to justify punishing the Palestinians for the behavior of Hamas. Should we punish all of Israel for the behavior of the Zionists? Both are extremists. Ooh. Oh, I know I just made some enemies right there. Jesus is a great teacher if you want to learn from him, but you have a different connection with God if you seek it. Absolutely. Right. They're after Palestine. It's a way of exerting control. Which is the same reason why we had redlining and Jim Crow. It's the same reason why there is voter suppression right now in this country. Because white people want control. They believe this is our country. It belongs to us. We are the real true patriots. God gave us this here country. So we need to make it as, it's too many darkies coming up in this country. They're going to outnumber us pretty soon. And what if they decide to do to us what we've done to them? No, we need to keep those little bastards subjugated so that they don't rise up and take power. So we're going to make sure we shift and change the laws and put in place things within the political system to keep those who we have been treated horrendously historically out of power, out of the fear that they might decide to get revenge instead of just seek equality. Yeah, I said it. In the name of the Lord. Every one of them, in the name of the Lord. Whew. I know today has been a very long, but I think enlightening and important conversation. Yeah, Bree, they call it, this is our America. I watched Jordan Kelper, I hope I'm saying his name right, doing interviews with some of these extremist MAGA folk and asking them the question back in 2016 when Trump was first running, the bigot, when was America great? And it was so funny to hear the different white people saying, well, I think if we go back to the 1930s, yeah, that's right. And Kelper going like, yeah, it was good except for the whole segregation, slavery thing. Oh, right, yeah, yeah, but other than that, yeah, it was great. The others say, well, with the whole founding fathers, that's when America was great. Yeah, except for the whole slavery and one drop rule and hanging and torture. Yeah, well, the guy said, you got to break a few eggs in order to make an omelet. You see how people are able to justify their behavior? When in fact, America has never been great in the sense that it's been great for everybody. It's been great for some, while being tragic for others. Don't be fooled, especially by idiotic, stupid people like the congressman down in Florida. I wanted to call a different name, that little furry animal down in Florida. Was talking, I thank God for slavery. Hadn't been for slavery, I'd be over in Africa worshiping a tree. You idiot. That's somebody who doesn't even know your own history. You're just stupid. That's just stupid and dumb. Dumb. Extremely dumb. In a church full of folks sitting out there talking, amen, that's right, you're right. We just say amen to anything. Just dumb. Dumb. Like our ancestors in Africa were over worshiping trees. Dumb. How stupid can you be? But anything to justify the horrendous behavior, egoic behavior that says we are better than them. Therefore, God is on our side. So we're justified in how we deal with the other. People are still looking up, waiting for Jesus to crack the sky instead of opening their consciousness and seeing their own divinity. They absolutely are. They absolutely are. They absolutely are. They've bought into a narrative. They've bought into an ideology that, if looked at logically, makes no damn sense. None. It doesn't. It's absolutely insane. And that's why you've heard me say, and I'll say it again, religion is an existential threat to humanity. Religion in every form that includes Christianity is an existential threat to humanity. It absolutely is. Because it forces whole swaths of people to believe in nonsensical fairy tales and mythology that are fine if they just kept it to themselves, but then when imposed upon all of the global community is destructive. It absolutely is. And so, God is not on Israel's side or Palestine's. God is not pro-Israeli, anti-Hamas. God is not pro-Hamas, anti-Israeli. God's not pro-American, anti-Russian, pro-Russian, anti-American. God is not on either side. This is a human war. This is human conflict, human made, human prosecuted, and human resolved. God didn't start it, and God is not in it, and God is not ending it. I don't care what your prophets say, Shabbat. The Lord is showing me that this is going to be, and God's going to do this, that, and the other with this, with the Israelis, with Palestine, and God's going to do it. And God ain't doing jack, because God ain't involved in none of it. This is purely a humanitarian experience. We created it. We have to stop it. Watch, God's getting ready to intervene supernaturally. No, God is not. I said it, I'm going to say it again. I'm making all the little prophets who on here lying and raising money from y'all silly folk mad at me now. No, God is not. Nope. This is purely a human conflict. And humans are going to have to be the one to resolve it, which means that it's probably going to be a mess. 99.99% of the assured that it's going to be an absolute mess, because we live under the illusion of separation. That some communities and some people are less valuable, less viable than others. That's why a country that says that it is ungodly and unlawful for you to murder is absolutely pro-death penalty. Oh yeah, well, murder under some circumstances is justifiable. Now, I mean, it's okay. Doesn't the Bible say an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? That same book, written from Jewish people from a Jewish perspective, to justify their own behavior, for the God who told them to go in and kill all the men, women, and children in this place or that place or that place. But he didn't even spare the cattle. He was like, kill all the cattle too. The cats, the dogs, the cows, the rats, the mice, everything. Just kill them all. Don't leave an insect. Just kill them all. Same God who just took 8 people, put them on a boat, and decided just to flood the entire world. Kill every man, woman, child, baby, cow, cat, just kill everything. Kill them all. I'm going to start all over with just these 8 people that's on the boat. You think God was unaware that Noah was a drunk? Yeah, I mean, since you believe the story is true. And what happened to all those bodies when the water receded? There should have been hundreds of thousands of millions of bodies and carcasses, just the whole entire planet littered with carcasses. What they just magically disappear? Making the soil unusable. You got dead flesh laying everywhere. How you gonna plant a garden coming off the ark? We don't have any record of Noah moving all of the carcasses and cattle and everything else out of the way so he could plant the garden in order to grow the wine. And how could the ground be fit to grow anything after that horrendous experience? I'm speaking to all the fundamentalist literalists that are out there who just, it happened just like God said. Really, come on. It's a narrative. It's an analogy. It's not literal. And we miss the point of the story because we bought into the fundamentalist literal ideology of it, which created separation. God so hated all mankind, his creation, God's own creation, that he wiped it all out and started. Well, why would he leave Noah and all the rest of his family? If he were going to start from scratch, then why not just breathe again into another form and start over? Like he did with Adam. Why leave another flawed human who was just like all the rest? Or we were taught to believe that somehow Noah was more righteous than everybody else. Then nobody else deserved to live. Come on, y'all. Come on. Come on. I know this is tough right here because I believed it too all my life, and I taught it, preached it. I mean, I did so many sermons on Noah and the ark until it's not even funny. Won't be water, but the fire. Oh, Lord. Come on, man. Come on. And in every case, God chooses a side. That is a red flag to you right there. The side doesn't choose God. God chooses a side. And turns against itself, its own creation, in favor of this one group or this one person. It's nonsense. This is a human problem that needs a human solution. The war between the Israelis and Palestinians, the division in this country between black and white, the racism and bigotry that exist across the globe are all human creations, and they all need a human response. That's a fact. All right. Okay. Whew. Man, we went, Gloria, you should be real happy. If you on here, Gloria, you probably just jumping for joy because it's been 2.5 hours. Man, let me quit. We done. We're done. Oh, what happened? Can y'all still see me, hear me? Hello? Can you still see me? Can you still hear me? It just flashed on my end like we went off the air. Somebody say something in the comments real quick. Let me know that you can still see me and hear me. Can you still see me? Oh, okay. Whew. I got to be careful. Flailing around here, hit the cord and mess around, disconnect myself. Okay. All right, so we're gonna close it up here. Listen, if you think of this platform as being valuable, and I hope that you do, and you're inspired by it, I want you to contribute and show your appreciation for it through your giving. Here are the means by which you can do so. We put this up often so that you're able to see it. I am so appreciative of those of you who have chosen the spiritual practice of tithing to support this work. It is not a command. You're not going to lose anything. You're not cursed if you don't do it or anything else like that. That is just one vehicle or mechanism or spiritual practice that is used in order to express your appreciation and support for this platform. Okay? You don't have to tithe. You can just give. You don't have to, if you don't want to give, you don't have to give. You give to other people. But giving is a spiritual practice, whether it's to this platform or others. But I am promoting this one. And so if you'd like to support this platform and show your appreciation for these kind of conscious conversations, please take advantage of the information that's on your screen right now. Do it now while you're still thinking about it so that you don't put your phone down and forget all about it. Pick up your phone, open up your Cashapp or your Zelle through your bank mobile app and make whatever donation you would like to give. Whatever donation you'd like to make. I appreciate your generosity, your consistency in support, especially for those of you who call me your friend. I have a real relationship with you. I appreciate your consistent support and your generosity that you continue to demonstrate for what we are doing on this platform. It's my hope and my desire that we will grow the platform to thousands and tens of thousands, but I am absolutely okay if we don't. I'd love to reach that level. That would be wonderful. More people that we can include in the conversation and impact. But I am happy with the 10, 15, 20 of you that join in with me on a weekly basis. But I do need for you to continue to support it so that we can continue to do this, what we're doing here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back to our discussion of the universal patterns, and we'll conclude that on next Sunday and then go into a different discussion following that. But today I thought it was very vital and important that we have this conversation. It was a great opportunity by what's taking place in the world for us to get a clearer perspective on God and stop seeing God and the rest of humanity as us and them, as better and lesser, as chosen and not chosen, and start to recognize that if we're going to come to a human solution to the very real human problems that we are having, we've got to do away with the religious window dressing and ideologies and begin to see each other as divine expressions of the all of everything, and then operate and function from the position of love. Love for each other, love for all mankind. All right, that's it for me today. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Soulful Sunday to you, and we'll see you again on next